This is The Sports Life.
Here's the snap, and this time they're just going to go down to the ground, and that will do it. And the rags to riches story for Indiana football comes to conclusion, and they are the national champions of 2026. What a football team! What a football team!
No doubt about that. Indiana was quite the football team last season. Will Tiemann here along with Dalton Shuttler, and welcome into the Sports Life. And a guy who called some of the greatest basketball games ever, Don Fisher, 50-plus years, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers, called a national championship football game, and Indiana won it. And for Don Fisher, that's his fourth national title he's called. Of course, the other three were in basketball. And one of those magical years was 1976, and we're going to revisit that.
50 years. Hard to believe it's been half a century since that undefeated Hoosiers team. That'll be a lot of fun. Besides that, we're going to have a lot of really deep conversation with Deb Schneider, of course, a great friend of the show, as we take a look at Donald Trump's executive order for college sports. What does it mean? What will actually take place? We'll get into some of that. And also, the Big Ten Conference has been maybe looking into some birds' rights to try and help with player retention in these rosters.
Well, sounds of the week. What do we got?
Well, since this has a little bit of an Indiana flavor to it, right? We've heard from Don Fisher and the football national championship, and we'll hear from basketball from half a century ago in a little bit. Let's go ahead and talk about Fernando Mendoza. All the hype with him in the NFL draft. Of course, he became the Hoosiers' first ever Heisman Trophy winner this past year in assisting the national championship coming back to Bloomington, Indiana. Here was a selection of his Heisman speech.
First, I want to thank God for giving me the opportunity to chase a dream that once felt the world away. Standing here tonight, holding this bad boy, representing Indiana University, still doesn't feel real. If you told me as a kid in Miami that I'd be here on stage holding this prestigious trophy, I probably would have laughed, cried like I'm doing now, or both. Because this moment, it's an honor, it's bigger than me. It's a product of a family, team, community, and a whole lot of people who believed in me long before anybody knew my name. This is an important one. I want every kid out there who feels overlooked, underestimated to know I was you. I was that kid too. I was in your shoes. The truth is, you don't need the most stars, hype, or rankings. You just need discipline, heart, and people who believe in you. And you need to believe in your own abilities. I hope this moment shows you that chasing your dreams are worth it, no matter how big or impossible they seem. God bless. Go Hoosiers. Thank you guys all.
What a speech. He wins the Heisman. And I can't even imagine what he was thinking when he went to Bloomington. Was he thinking he was going to be a Heisman Trophy winner? Was he thinking they were going to be the national champ? I figured he thought his plot in life would be better, and he was going to a place that could win a little more. But I just wonder, at the very beginning of last football season, did he envision any of that stuff?
You know, they tell you to shoot for the moon, and then you land amongst the stars. They never really say shoot for the moon and you hit the moon, and that's what Fernando Mendoza did. So
He did.
It really is incredible. Maybe the best bridge possible between that football success and what we're going to get into with this week's Sports Life, where we celebrate the 50-year anniversary of that 1976 undefeated Indiana team, is this quote from Quinn Buckner. This sound comes courtesy of Wish TV, Channel 8 there in Indianapolis. Here's what Quinn Buckner had to say, reflecting on what his head coach, Bob Knight, had said to him half a century ago with this accomplishment.
After we won, he said something to me that I didn't fully grasp, and you guys know what I'm about to say. He said, "You've done something for the people in the state of Indiana. You'll never understand what you did for them." We just had it happen again in football, because the ethos of Indiana is about sports. And we were able to bring it on the basketball side, and people have lived with that for 50 years. You now have it in football, which is just incredibly humbling for someone like me who was involved in the sport to have watched that kind of success. But what it does is it brings people together. That's really what he was telling me. Again, I'm 22 years old and I'm getting ready to go to the Olympics and the pros. I was not paying attention. For the people in the state of Indiana, what we were able to accomplish, we didn't fully understand. We understand it now because of what Kent talks about, what the question about why people ask us those questions. Because for many people, that makes them stand taller and put their shoulders back, and for that, we can all be proud here 50 years later.
Quinn Buckner, All-American, NBA player, pretty good broadcaster as well. Mm-hmm. And he really nailed it. Sport can do one thing that most other enterprises cannot. It can lift a community. It can make everybody feel better. It can do all those things he talked about, and we're grateful for it. When we come back with more of the Sports Life, more Indiana in just a moment.
So, got one for you, boss.
Oh, yeah?
What's black, white, and dented all over?
I give up.
The company truck. I know, but thanks to our agent, we've already submitted an insurance claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Lucky for you, that's simple human sense.
Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you.
Medicaid and CHIP offer free or low-cost health coverage for children and teens. Hospital and doctor visits, prescriptions, shots, and more are covered. That's peace of mind for parents if a child is sick or gets injured. And parents may now be eligible for Medicaid too, even if they've applied in the past. Enrollment is always open. Visit insurekidsnow.gov or call 1-877-KIDS-NOW. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
If you have diabetes, listen up. If you have insurance, you can qualify for a continuous glucose monitor. With a CGM, you can continuously track your levels and trends and spend more time in range, significantly lowering your A1C. More importantly, a CGM eliminates the one thing most people with diabetes hate: painful finger sticks. Order your new continuous glucose monitor today. If you use insulin and if you've seen your diabetes care provider within the last 6 months, you may qualify for your own CGM right now. We'll do all the insurance paperwork and deliver your new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost to you. Medicare and most insurances will cover your CGM, so don't wait. Have your insurance handy and call the Aptiva Medical CGM Health Hotline right now.
800-948-6912. 800-948-6912. 800-948-6912. That's 800-948-6912.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Roxanne Watson is on a mission.
Hello, how are you doing today?
She wants more people to register as organ, eye, and tissue donors.
Are you an organ donor? Yes, I am. Yay.
My goal is to sign up the most people in the United States.
What drives her? Roxanne's own life was saved through the gift of a heart transplant, made possible by an organ donor.
I decided that day that I was going to devote myself to the cause of organ donation and signing people up and honoring my donor by doing that.
Now she's back to health, and she's a powerful force helping to save lives every day through her work. Imagine what you can make possible by leaving behind the gift of life.
8 people can be helped with the major organs, and up to 50 people can be helped with a little bit of everything. And when you think about it that way, that you could help that many people, it's amazing. It really is.
Learn more and sign up as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. Go to organdonor.gov. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
Welcome back from Weather Sports Life. We'll team in here along with Dalton Shetland. Don't forget, auto owners insurance, simple human sense. Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you. Well, one of the great things about sports is greatness never gets old. It's always fun to relive it. 1976 in college basketball gave us something we may never, ever see again. A team that would win the national championship and win every game from point one to the end of the road. And that's being Indiana.
Yeah, that's most certainly right. And we actually, a couple years back here on this show, The Sports Life,
we uncovered a bit more about that 1976 undefeated team and what went into making them so special. We actually did this when Gonzaga was threatening that mark. If you remember, Gonzaga went undefeated in the regular season, got into the NCAA tournament. As it would eventually play out, they would lose to Baylor in the national championship game in 2021. But at the time, there was discussion and comparison between those two squads, and that's actually where we start with the feature by talking with the legendary Indiana basketball writer, Bob Hamill.
They're talking about this current Gonzaga team, which is a real threat to be that first unbeaten champion since Indiana, as having three guys that are high draft picks. Well, that Indiana team had three of their four seniors. Three were taken at the first 11 picks of the draft, and the one junior starter, Kent Benson, was the number one pick of the next draft. And in the following season, NBA season, the first time it could happen, all five of the Indiana starters started for their NBA team in the opening game. So that's how good that talent was. And Bob Knight's coaching didn't hurt it either. So that was just a powerhouse team that remains the best team I've ever seen. And when Kentucky came close a few years ago, when we got to the Final Four and defeated somebody from CBS, called me and we were talking about. He said, "Well, you'd have to admit it's much more difficult to do it now." And I said, "I don't think so. If you go back and look at the tournament route that Indiana took, there was no seeding in. So they started out against St. John's, which would have been the Big East champ. There wasn't a Big East champ, but they were the best team in the East. Then they played in the their second game in the NCAA tournament was against the SEC champion Alabama, which was number 5 ranked. Their third game was against the number 2 team, Marquette, which had lost only one game, and that was to Minnesota was the Big Ten. So today, an unbeaten team would not really run into anything close to that kind of a tournament schedule beyond having to survive the Big Ten schedule.
And that takes us to this week's cover story. A salute to the last NCAA D1 basketball team to go undefeated and win the national championship, the 1976 Indiana Hoosiers. To understand that historic team, you have to go back to the year before, where the foundation was laid, says the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers for the past 48 years, Don Fisher.
Without question, the 31-1 season was disappointing because that team felt like they were capable of winning the national championship. And they did. They had the capabilities. But Scott May, one of their stars in that particular ball club, he was a junior at the time and the second leading scorer on the team. He got hurt in the Purdue game leading up to tournament play. And that was about, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks before. He broke his arm, and he did try to come back, but he was not very comfortable with it. He didn't play very well in that last game that they got beaten by Kentucky, and that was also a sore spot for any Indiana fan because Indiana and Kentucky were such great arch rivals. But all that said, there was a belief that team did not accomplish what they had set out to do. And this team, going into the 76 season, was bound to determine that wasn't going to happen again, that they were going to win a national title. That was the feeling. That was the belief so strong under Bob Knight that this team was capable and were going to win a national championship. And that's the feeling you went into the season with, that this team was good enough, and they believed in themselves to the point where you weren't going to beat them.
Not only were you not going to beat them to a title, but you weren't going to beat them in a single game. That's the goal that was put before that team, before that historic campaign, says Bob Hamill.
That was what Bob Knight gathered them together before the season even started. He said that this will not be a successful season unless you go undefeated. He always, the target always in the Knight era was the Big Ten championship. They never talked NCAA championship. They always talked Big Ten championship. That was the one year the target was not just winning the national championship. The target was going undefeated.
Fast forward past 31 wins, and Indiana would head to the national championship game to take on Michigan for the third time that season, after a previous overtime thriller between the two in Bloomington that IU would claim. Now, for the third time and for the title, on March 29th, 1976, it would be the Hoosiers and the Wolverines.
And Indiana who will not be deprived of the finals this year. They are in the final ball game, Indiana and Michigan. It's all Big Ten.
Well, the first thing you remember is that early on in the ball game, Bobby Wilkerson went down. He was playing on defense, and he went down and he got hit.
Knocked away, Grody on a steal. Steve Grody on the break, 2-on-2. Grody back inside of Britt, shot good. Wayman Britt got his first bucket of the game. And Bob Workman, the official, talking with Bobby Knight now. Indiana's player was down, and Bobby wanted to know why something hadn't been done. And it's Bobby Wilkerson, and he is shaken up on the play.
And he went to the floor, and the play stopped. And Wilkerson was actually taken off the floor on a stretcher.
And lo and behold, the first couple minutes, I get accidentally hit with the elbow, and I'm knocked out. So I don't see none of the game, and I don't see nothing. I've never seen the game, and all I know is that Coach Knight and John Havlicek came in the locker room after the game and said that we had won to the hospital, and that's all I remember.
Michigan had a 35-29 lead at the halftime, and Indiana had lost Wilkerson. He had a severe concussion. He was an inch or so away from perhaps killing him. It was a very, very bad injury, and breaking up that combination of Buckner Wilkerson was an enormous problem. And but they adjusted and wound up playing the best second half that I've ever seen in a championship game.
Fires to Jimmy Wishman. Wishman brings it outside, spins around, dribbling across the key. Tries to penetrate. Ted gives to Benson. Turnaround jumper by Benny is good. Ted Benson has got 18. 45-43, and Indiana's taking the lead by 2. Grody driving to the right side. Buckner's field. He's on a breakaway. Drives down. Puts it up. Scores. Glenn Buckner now with 8, and Indiana takes a 4-point lead.
They outscored Michigan 57-33, and that 57 is still the NCAA tournament record for a point and a half of the championship game, either first or second. And that's by a team that was known for defense, not offense. But with all the pressure on, all the unbeaten season, the national championship on the line, that's how well they played down the stretch.
Baxter flies down the other end, fires a jumper, no good, and Benson rebounds. Up toward Abernathy. May. He's got a breakaway. Drive, shoots, scores! Scotty May has got 24, and Indiana leads by 12. Buckner driving across one man, brings it back outside. Fires to Jimmy Wishman. Wishman now looks for help. Now turns around and bounces to Quinn Buckner. Buckner driving toward the lane. Underneath, puts it up, scores! Buckner scores right down the pipe. He's got 16. 10 seconds. Baxter almost lost it. Here's Michigan on the dribble. Baxter down the right side. Lost the ball. Battlevic is on the steal. Radford on a break. 5 seconds. Field drive. Shoots it up. And misses it. There's Hamlin scores again. Indiana's number 1. They've won it. Indiana's won it. They're the national champion for 1976. Can you believe it? Incredible. Bobby Knight and Johnny Orr standing here in front of us, shaking hands. Bill Frieder now. Unbelievable. As Indiana's won the national championship, and the Hoosiers have won it all, 86-68.
All I know is that these guys believed that they were going to win a national championship, and they believed that from the very beginning of the year. There was this will to do so, and it was a fierce will, and it was because they had felt like they had kind of gotten robbed from the year before based on the injury to Scott May. So there was just a will about these guys. You could feel it. You could taste it almost. If you were around the team, and we were around the team a lot, you just knew that there was a confidence level. It wasn't arrogance. It was a confidence level that Bob Knight had instilled in these guys, that they were good enough. They should have won it the year before. We're going to prove that was not a fluke, that Indiana's going to win a national championship.
Don Fisher on the call 45 years ago as he reflects on the team there. Scott May led the way for Indiana as he would finish with 26 points and was elated afterwards.
I am. Right now, I'm so happy I don't know what to do. I could cry, I guess. I really could. It's kind of hard to believe, We put in 4 years of good, hard work, and it finally paid off for us. What better way can you go out, end your career by winning a national championship? I'm really happy. I really am.
The captain, Quinn Buckner, chipped in 16 points in these comments.
I just think it's the greatest thing that's happened to me probably since I've been living, and I just want to thank everybody at IU, fans and the coaching staff that I was able to be a part of it.
Finally, here was Indiana head coach Bob Knight after the game.
I'm very grateful that we had an opportunity to play in this game tonight, and very pleased that we won it from two standpoints. From the standpoint of our players, I don't think there's a group that's worked harder in the country than our kids have. We were disappointed last year. We had the same goal last year that we had this year. So this has been kind of a 2-year quest for us to get this thing done. They've stuck with it. And then secondly, I feel very, very pleased that the people that have invested time and thought and effort and parts of themselves in this team were rewarded with the game tonight.
But he wouldn't be done there. Bob Hamill has a vivid memory from after Bob Knight's first national championship in 1976.
They beat Michigan to win the championship. That's Bob's first. And there's just pandemonium in the locker room afterwards, and I have to do my interviewing and all those things. And that I was at the same hotel they were, so I was going back to the team bus to go to the hotel as we left the Spectrum in Philadelphia. And Bob is right behind me. He and John Havlicek left, did not go back with the team. They went back to Mitty to the hospital with books to see how that was going. That was his first concern at that point. So I knew I was not going to see him again. I just kind of turned around and said, it dawned on me, here's this guy's first national championship. He said, we haven't even talked about it. I put a hand out and I said, by the way, congratulations. and he took the hand and he kind of looked over my shoulder and he's behind me and he says, thanks, but it should have been two.
Well, when Bob Hamill says Coach Knight said it should have been two, he's right. I mean, he's absolutely right. And who can imagine that? If Scotty May doesn't break his wrist, I think, in what would have been an undefeated possible in national championship season for Indiana the year before, can you imagine at that level running the table back-to-back years?
I mean, there's a reason that very few teams have ever done it, and that just would have added on. I mean, since Bob Knight has passed away, we've continued to look at the legacy, and not that you ever forget the winning he's done, but when you keep re-examining it, you're like, oh my goodness, what he was able to accomplish. And if you add a back-to-back in the mix of that, I mean, it's just incredible what he did.
Well, but he did it in 1976, and we may never see it again. Well, when we come back with the Sports Life, we're going to be a little more somber. We're not going to celebrate greatness of the past. We're going to talk about how the future may look for all of college sports. It's all coming up in just a moment.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Dad. Did you get a new haircut or something? A new shirt? You're looking good.
What happened?
A little fender bender?
How little?
A few days in the shop little. But thanks to Mom and our agent, we've already submitted a claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto Owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Sounds like simple human sense.
I'm fine, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna ask.
Ask your independent agent if Auto Owners makes sense for you.
This is a potter's field. When people can't pay for their funerals, they are buried here. It is a lonely, desolate place, littered with unmarked headstones. No one visits. No one leaves flowers. But it doesn't have to be that way. For as low as $1 a day, you can ensure your family will have the money to pay your funeral expenses. We offer burial insurance plans that pay up to $30,000. Considering the average funeral costs more than $10,000, that's peace of mind for your family. There are no medical exams, your rates won't increase, and your policy cannot be canceled as long as you make your premium payments. Call now to get approved in minutes and ensure your final resting place is more than just a pauper's grave in a potter's field.
800-562-2407. 800-562-2407. 800-562-2407. That's 800-562-2407. Paid for by Final Expense Direct.
We all make choices about alcohol. Kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye, Dad. Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, remind me about that party again?
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations, and they want honest answers in everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path, because when you talk, they hear you. Learn more at underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Here's a real-life story that affects 50% of all of us out there. It's called divorce. If you've gotten divorced and now you're struggling to pay your bills and your credit card debts are completely out of control, you need to call this special debt relief hotline right now. We help people with all kinds of money problems caused by different life challenges, a divorce, a job loss, even heavy medical bills. All these life events can sometimes financially stress you out and cause you to get out of control. We help people get their lives back by showing them ways to consolidate and reduce their debt, in some cases for a fraction of what they owe. If your credit card balances are more than $10,000, call us and learn how to reduce your credit card bills and monthly payments now. Here's our number.
Paid for by Debt.com. Call now, 800-810-1584, 800-810-1584, 800-810-1584. That's 800-810-1584.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. Will Tiemann here along with Dalton Shetler. Well, to say that college sports could use some uniformity could be somewhat of an understatement. So, on April the 3rd, 2026, President Trump signed an executive order. The executive order is Urgent National Action to Save College Sports. So what does that mean? Well, that's why we've asked Deb Schneider, sports law attorney with Fishman Stewart and an adjunct professor at Michigan State and Wayne State University, to join us. And Deb, thanks for hopping on the show again. And can you give us an overview of what this really means?
Okay, well, Dalton, thank you again for having me. I always enjoy talking sports with you. Always fun. We have an executive order that came out on April 3rd, where President Trump is trying to change collegiate sports. And I think there's a lot, as we're always saying, there's a lot to unpack here. But realistically, this is less about immediately changing the rules of college sports, but more about pressuring Congress or the courts or the NCAA to do something. As we know, college sports are a bit of a mess, but the overall legal force of an executive order is not that the executive order can force the NCAA to change their rules or they can force Congress. An executive order can make a federal agency do something. And he does have some things about federal agencies and using federal funding as a leverage against athletic departments and universities that don't fall in line. But he's also asking Congress to do something, and he's asking the NCAA to do something. And I believe August 1st is his deadline in this executive order.
Deb, it's interesting because throughout this executive order, there's all sorts of different variables to this, right? I mean, you're tackling and spearheading eligibility. You're tackling the transfer issue. You're tackling trying to protect women's sports in Olympic sports. I was curious if you could take us through all the different layers that are being addressed in this executive order.
Well, I think the first thing to really look at is what's most likely to survive and where we're going to have issues. So if you look at the fact that the executive order can only direct federal agencies, anything against the NCAA has to survive any kind of antitrust or labor law challenges. We don't really have labor law here because collegiate athletes are not employees. So when you look at, for instance, the transfer limits, the executive order wants a one-time transfer rule, immediate eligibility. The problem is that courts have struck this down, which is why we have the mess that we have in the transfer portal. And the executive order can't change that. It's not going to reverse those rulings. So here they're saying, let's do something. These are the same rules the courts have questioned. Unless Congress steps in, we don't have any change. We don't have anything with the Title IX aspect. Title IX, the exposure still is out there, the exposure for non-revenue sports. While we're talking about protecting these sports, as long as revenue sharing exists, and when revenue sharing increases, we actually have more Title IX exposure. So we're using it kind of as a justification, but also a bit of a warning. That's where I expect to see some litigation. They haven't talked, the executive order does not talk at all really about employment status. That's totally unresolved. They're kind of tiptoeing around it. And as long as that exists, we have these ongoing cases. The executive order can't really decide employment status. That's something that the courts might be able to do or Congress could do. And this is probably the most dangerous question for college athletics. And we've talked about that many times before, because if you make the athletes employees, we have an issue with not only workers' comp, but how do we pay them, and Equal Pay Act, and Fair Labor Standards Act, and all those things. And then you have the issue of how do you unionize, and who unionizes, and which unions exist. Are they each part of each school? Are they by sport? All of that gets rolled in. So I think the big thing with this order is that it really doesn't have the force of law. It is using federal funding as leverage, which is trying to make universities fall in line and make this much bigger than athletics. So I expect we're going to see some lawsuits on that.
So, Deb, if this gets to Congress and they decide to adopt some of these elements, would that preclude or at least protect the NCAA against lawsuits?
Absolutely. If Congress decided to do something, Congress can fix this. Congress can come in and they can say, this is the law of the land, and you have to comply with it. Up until this point, Congress has really punted in a lot of these, and a lot of that is because we have a Congress that is so disjointed at this point. But the reality is they could fix it, and they haven't yet. This is very much all these talking points are very much from the Republican side. The Democrats are looking at different protections. So I think I'm not confident that we're going to get something from Congress in any kind of timely manner.
I want to ask you too, Deb, as we talk about all those, and you hit it right from the top, in this discussion, it feels paramount to talk about the ones that are maybe going to survive the most. Does any of this, do you feel through your perspective, your prism, that any of this has enough momentum and legs where we're going to see change stem from this executive order? Or is a lot of this just noise to maybe just try to kickstart something somewhere else?
I think a lot of it is noise. I think a lot of it is really a pressure point. We have college sports right now are at a flashpoint. There's a lot to say with this executive order. Potentially it exceeds presidential authority. You can't override existing court rulings. The funding threats, which is really where the teeth of this order come into play, and it's saying if you don't fall in line in your athletic department, we're going to pull federal educational grants. That's where the real teeth is, but that could be unconstitutional, unconstitutionally coercive in a lot of ways. We have issues with due process. You're punishing the schools financially without any real clear rules. So all of that comes into play. I think Title IX, which is sitting out there, is really going to be a litigation trigger on this, because anytime you force any kind of revenue share, you exacerbate this gender equity disparity. So Congress is going to have to come in and also talk about Title IX and say this, whatever program we come up with, doesn't violate Title IX. But also keep in mind that if Congress comes in and steps in, we have this Administrative Procedure Act and you need notice and comment. August 1st is coming very quickly. So we have a big problem with that. I think the one thing that is going to really stand out from this, and we haven't talked about it yet, is the collectives and the role of a collective. Because this executive order talks about what good NIL is, which is true market value endorsements by individual companies. If you have a collective that is very closely associated with athletic departments, which many of them are at this point, and they are paying for enrollment and they're paying for athletes to stay, that this executive order is saying is impermissible. And so I think we're going to really see these collectives changing how they do business.
So at the end of the day, Deb, it sounds like there's still a lot of moving parts, a lot of obstacles to overcome to come up with any set of standardization in terms of the rules. Realistically, is this ever going to happen?
I think we're going to see little changes, Will. We'll see the collectives rewriting their contracts. We'll see them separating recruiting language from payments. We'll probably see changes in valuation. But from an overarching, are we going to change college sports with this executive order? My opinion is no, we're not. We're probably adding fuel to the fire.
Well, that's a little discouraging off the top of my head.
I'm sorry.
Man, I was having a good day, too. Anyway, so Deb has agreed to stay with us because there's one other topic to talk about that's really interesting, and it's called the bird rule. We'll talk about that in just a moment.
So, got one for you, boss.
Oh, yeah?
What's black, white, and dented all over?
I give up.
The company truck. I know, but thanks to our agent, we've already submitted an insurance claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Lucky for you, that's simple human sense.
Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Do you hear that? That's the sound of uncertainty lurking under your hood. You know the feeling. I know I do. That sudden sinking sensation when you see a check engine light or your car unexpectedly breaks down and you're faced with sky-high repair bills. It's time to shield against unexpected repairs with CarShield. CarShield is America's most trusted auto protection company and has an A rating with the Better Business Bureau. Don't let the fear of a breakdown keep you up at night. Trust the Shield, CarShield, and say goodbye to terrifying repair bills and hello to peace of mind. Your plan also comes with 24/7 roadside assistance, courtesy towing, rental car options, and so much more. Don't wait till it's too late. Call CarShield now before a breakdown. Protect your wallet. Protect your car with CarShield. Get our best protection ever. Call now. You'll thank me later. 800-965-1292. 800-965-1292. That's 800-965-1292.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Did you receive a call or message that mentioned Social Security and demanded immediate action? Did the caller know your Social Security number or other personal information and tell you that your Social Security number had been used in connection with the crime? Did you feel worried that your Social Security number might be suspended, your bank account might be frozen or seized, or you could be arrested? That is not the Social Security Administration. Social Security will not threaten you, demand your personal information, or instant payment, email or text you pictures or documents, or use a real government official's name to gain your trust. Social Security does not accept payments by gift card, prepaid debit card, internet currency, or by mailing cash. Criminals use these forms of payment because they are hard to trace. Do not be fooled. Hang up. Ignore them. Report this criminal activity to the Social Security Administration Office of the Inspector General at oig.ssa.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. We'll team in here along with Dalton Shetler. And hanging around for another segment is Deb Schneider. She's a sports law attorney with Fishman Stewart and an adjunct professor at Michigan State and Wayne State Universities. Last segment, we talked about the possibility of the federal government maybe fixing some of the craziness in college athletics. And in the middle of all this comes up a discussion about an old rule that the NBA passed in 1983. It's called the Bird Rule. And what that was, it enabled NBA teams. They could go over the salary cap if it came to giving some extra money to keep the roster in place. And, of course, the Bird Rule will let you know that's probably the Boston Celtics and Larry Bird, which is what caused all this. And now we move forward into the college athletics. And lo and behold, it is creeping up in the conversation as maybe a way for roster retention in the Big Ten. So, Deb, as you take a look at this, what do you think? Is this something that could be good, and does it have any possibility of happening?
Well, thanks for letting me stick around to talk more sports and the Bird Rule. I think if we go back to what the Bird Rule was designed to do, which is basically let teams pay their own players more than the cap to keep them. So we have competitive balance, we have player continuity. Those are wonderful goals. The problem, there's always a problem in college sports, right?
Yes.
The big problem is that the NBA is a professional league where we know the athletes are employees. The athletes collectively bargain for the terms. So they have collectively bargained and agreed to the Bird Rule. Now we're trying to take this rule and put it into college sports. And college sports are not governed by labor law. College sports are governed by antitrust law. There's a labor law exemption which pulls the NBA out from all of these problems. So if you're looking at college sports governed by antitrust laws, as long as the schools agree on caps and exceptions and retention, and they're controlling the marketing and the mobility, you have a potential antitrust violation in horizontal price fixing because the competitors are still coordinating the pay rules. So what's legal in the NBA is not necessarily legal in college sports. You have the schools on one side trying to really combat that transfer portal to pay for play. And what we're trying to do is create something that looks athlete friendly, so it will pack some muster. So there are some ways potentially to do this. I think the biggest possibility, the possibility that could happen is if the Bird Rule from college sports stays within the cap that the House settlement has set forth. So the House settlement set forth a cap this year of $20.5 million. And I've heard that what they want to do is pay more than that cap to retain athletes. But if they lowered that, changed the revenue share, and paid less than the cap, there's a possibility that we could give more money to returning athletes and still maintain this Bird Rule. Of course, we have discretionary funding and we have a potential Title IX problem, but that's an entire different segment.
Well, and what I find really fascinating about this, Deb, and it's been kind of a personal curiosity, I suppose, for this last year, and I think the answer resides on the legal front, so I want to pick your brain on this, because we're talking about there being a cap, right, with revenue share for universities with these athletes. It kind of follows, of course, there's a cap model in the pros, and if we stay with the NBA, one of the really big stories from this last year was what the LA Clippers had with Kawhi Leonard, where they won a free agency sweepstakes, and this was dug up in an investigation by Pablo Torre, to win Kawhi Leonard, and they ended up with this alleged aspiration deal where the company Aspiration, which is being accused of maybe not quite holding the real value, was paying in addition to Kawhi Leonard to get him to the LA Clippers, and of course Aspiration, a part of the Ballmer group, as it's alleged. The college model kind of has that, because every university already has NIL directors and departments. So besides whatever the university is agreeing to give you from the revenue share, they're drumming up things on the side from an NIL perspective that seems to be working against the interest of what this cap model is to begin with. How is that so?
Well, when we're looking at the cap model and the house revenue share, the revenue share is talking about the university actually sharing revenue. It's not talking about the NIL aspect, which is outside of the revenue share. That is what has traditionally been governed by the collectives. I say traditionally, a few years.
Right.
This is all very new. That's been governed by the collectives and by the individual athletes or outside businesses who are saying, I'd like this athlete to tweet about me, 100 times or any of this, and pay them for actual marketing. So we're separating the two. It's comparing apples to oranges in some ways, because that's not stopping. Now, that is somewhat governed by the executive order that we talked about in the last segment, where we're talking about what's fair and what is actually what I'm going to call good NIL as opposed to bad or impermissible NIL. So as long as if they're paying for enrollment or for staying, that could potentially be impermissible NIL uses. But using it for market value, we might be able to do that. But again, that cannot connect the athlete to the school. So that's where the disconnect is coming. In the pros, you can definitely connect that.
Well, Deb, if you just look at money as money, that you only really care about what you get, you don't care where it comes from or what pot. With the NIL, even if the Bird Rule never happens, isn't the NIL supplement basically kind of the Bird Rule?
In some ways, it really is. Well, in some ways, you can get NIL beyond the revenue share. But again, you can't have NIL under the executive order, and theoretically, you're not supposed to have NIL that pays you to stay at a particular university. That's the difference.
I like when we talk about what it's supposed to be, because we know it's none of that, really. And so
never has been.
I know. I like what it's supposed to be, and we're going, where's that? I haven't seen that yet. So I want to shift gears a little bit away from the Bird Rule per se. Let's talk about transparency a second. Let's take Dalton, okay? Dalton is an All-American first-team quarterback. He's a junior, and he could transfer out because everybody wants him, right? But his university wants to keep him. Because there's no transparency in the truest sense like there is in the NFL, we really don't know Dalton's true value, okay? What are the odds we're ever going to see that, where you can sit and go, okay, a number one quarterback like Dalton is worth this compared to a second-tier quarterback who's pretty good? Is that ever going to happen?
Well, we have the College Sports Commission, which was set up under the House settlement to determine what the fair market value is. So I think we're starting to see some of that. We're starting to see some ideas of what a first round quarterback might be, when they're playing college sports, or a, 4-star recruit. But a lot of it depends on their social media presence. I hate to say it, because they're not what we thought NIL was going to be back in 21, was going to be doing commercials for the local car dealership, and it's turned into a social media method of making money in a lot of ways. The more followers, the more you're worth.
Well, Deb, as always, it's good to chat with you. And unfortunately, it looks like we still don't have resolution to some of the things we care most about. And I will leave you with this one thought. You ready? Dalton and I have talked about this. Aside from everything we've discussed, proposals, legality, all that, at some point, do the people who fund NIL say, I'm done with this. Enough's enough? Is that possible when you talk about market corrections?
I think it may be. I think people are getting a little tired of what's going on in college sports.
Well, there you go. It's always fun talking with you, Deb. I hope you have a great summer. And
thank you. You too. I hope I get to talk to you before the summer's out and somebody does something else.
You know they will. That's a lock. Deb, I sure appreciate it. Take care.
You too. Thank you.
Well, there you go. As always, an informative visit with Deb Schneider, sports law attorney with Fishman Stewart and an adjunct professor at Michigan State and Wayne State Universities. Well, we talked about what's going on with the federal government in terms of fixing college sports. But the Bird rule, Dalton, was interesting because that could go any number of different ways. And it was interesting, as soon as Coach Mick Cronin of UCLA is pushing this, and some of the other Big Ten people go, oh, we like this deal. I looked around, and so far, the SEC, Big 12 ACC, not so excited about it.
Yeah, it's odd, isn't it?
Yeah. Maybe the Big Ten's got more cash.
That is for sure.
We'll be back with more of the Sports Life in just a moment.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Dad. Did you get a new haircut or something? A new shirt? You're looking good.
What happened?
A little fender bender?
How little?
A few days in the shop little, but thanks to Mom and our agent, we've already submitted a claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto Owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Sounds like simple human sense.
I'm fine, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna ask.
Ask your independent agent if Auto Owners makes sense for you.
Everything is expensive right now. Gas, food, you name it. You're spending more, you are making the same or less money. So, what do? You rack up credit card debt. That's what you do. It's not your fault. It's the economy. And guess what? If you rack up too much credit card debt like some of us, you can't pay your bills. Then the credit card companies, as nice as they are, start hounding you for money. Then you start your downward spiral. A smart thing for you to do is to call the Zero Debt. They can help you consolidate all your credit card bills into one affordable payment. Millions of people have done it. It works to make you debt-free. Make this free call right now. It costs you nothing to learn more.
800-298-9093. 800-298-9093. 800-298-9093. That's 800-298-9093.
We are strong, we are resilient, and we will get through this together. But these are stressful times, and it's important to also practice good self-care. It's normal to feel overwhelmed, anxious, or afraid, but there is hope. Reach out to someone, connect with your friends, stay in touch with your community, and know that you are not alone. Learn more at wearebroadcasters.com/hope. Furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
I found hope in the midst of an overwhelming situation.
Alcoholism is a disease that can affect any family. Everyone suffers, but there is help and hope at Al-Anon Family Groups.
Al-Anon gave me my life back. I'm a better father and husband.
Are you in an overwhelming situation because of someone else's drinking?
Al-Anon and Alateen can help.
Local and virtual meetings are available. Maybe one could work for you. Call 1-866-200-0033 or visit alanon.org/hope.
I'm Naheem Hines, professional football player. No matter the challenges I face every day in the NFL, my mom is always there for me, despite her own struggles with muscular dystrophy. And MDA is there for my mom. At their 150 care centers across the U.S., MDA is the leading organization in research and care for kids and adults with muscular dystrophy, ALS, and related neuromuscular diseases. Join me and learn more at helpmda.org today. Thank you.
Welcome back for more of the Sports Life. Will Teeman here along with Dalton Shetler. Fun show. We celebrated the 1976 Hoosiers who went undefeated and became national champs, and had a great conversation with Deb Schneider about where the institution of college athletics is really heading. So, having said that, it is now time for our parting shots.
That's right, and if you missed any of those conversations, make sure you give us a follow again at Sports Life Now. That's where you can find us on Twitter or X. That's again at Sports Life Now. For my parting shot, I wanted to examine a little bit about the ratings when it comes to women's college basketball, and a bit of a spoiler alert, this is going to be a future topic here on the Sports Life. But if you go back to BC times, before Clark, if you go from the years 2010 to 2022, women's basketball national championship games usually averaged right around 4 million viewers. Sometimes it would get a hair over. A lot of times it was just dipped under. Then, of course, we had the boom of the Caitlin Clark time, right, in 2023 and in 24. In 23 was right around 10 million viewers. In 24 was around 19 million viewers. And in 25, last year, the first year without Caitlin Clark, it dipped back down, but not close to what it used to be. Still above 8 million viewers, pushing 8.5. And this last year, it got up to 10 million viewers. So it's showing that women's college basketball has more than doubled in terms of viewership with these national championship games. And we talked about it. We had a lot of different conversation pieces actually on this program. When the Caitlin Clark boom was taking place, we had a lot of different conversations about it. Is it sustainable? We're learning that women's college basketball is here to stay. It still has a lot of eyeballs and certainly has a really bright future as well.
And they're getting the eyeballs because it's a good game to watch.
Yep.
It's very entertaining. Okay, I'm going to go back to my youth. You ready? When I grew up, here's kind of what we got a good dose of. The best college football was in the Southeastern Conference. They had all the fast guys, the big guys. The Big Ten was, kind of stodgy, run the ball up the middle kind of thing. And at the end of the day, because the Big Ten was that way, and the SEC was built differently, they had the best teams, and they were the national champs. And when it came to college basketball, it was always the East Coast. It was either the ACC or the Big East. Those were the really good teams. And so just for fun, I started thinking about this for a moment. We more than talked about the last 3 college football seasons, Michigan, Ohio State, Indiana, national champs. So then I went back in college basketball, and I looked at the 10 tournaments played prior to this Michigan National Championship run. 7 of those were won by teams from the East Coast, 3 from the ACC and 4 from the Big East. And my point here is, are we seeing a shifting in the power structure, not only in basketball, but football as well? So, time will tell. And with that, that is a wrap for our show. And as always, we appreciate everybody dialing in. And we should also note that you can find us wherever you find your podcasts, like SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple. And make sure to check us out and hit subscribe. As always, thanks to the Big Ten Network. The Sports Life is produced by Dalton Shetler. Our executive producer is Wendy Hart. So on behalf of Dalton, I'm Will Teeman, and thanks for your time.